All right, next one is district goals report.
Ms. Smetana has Ms. Augustine with her tonight. And they're going to be reporting on matriculation rate and graduation rate.
You don't bite, so you come on.
Good evening. I know that you've received a copy of the graduation rate and the matriculation rate, so I'll start with the graduation rate. I think the good news is that for the class of 2014, we are showing a 92% graduation rate without even an adjustment to that cohort. We have 6 fifth-year seniors that some of them went through the summer school APEX program and still did not earn their diploma, but several of them have returned, and we are still working with them and their families with the hope that through APEX and some support that they can still earn their diploma and graduate, and that we would be able to count them in our 2014 graduation rate. Additionally, and I will address your question, Mr. Walsh, about SIS, the Student Information System. I know that was one of the questions that you had. We found that there were 4 errors in our Student Information System, and that is the system that we use to track any student that comes into RB and then any student that leaves RB. And once a student has been identified as an RB student and they transfer out, we have to have some kind of validation of where they went, some kind of report on where they ended up. So if they transfer to another public school, it's pretty easy because the SIS system will pick them up. Say they transfer to LT or they transfer to Proviso. But where it gets a little more complicated is if they transfer to, say, St. Joe's or to a private school that isn't mandated to keep track of those students through SIS. So we were able to identify 4 students that did in fact go to a private school. We have confirmation that they graduated. We had their registrar send us an email. So the hope is that we can talk to the state, show that they have in fact graduated, and they won't be counting against us. So if we are able to really work with these 6 fifth-year seniors, we do have, we've had 1 student already graduated last week, so we're down to 5. And if we're able to resolve those 4 errors in SIS, we could increase our graduation rate to 95%, which would, be one of the highest rates that we've had in several years. So that's what we're, trying to clean up, and I'm working with data processing to change our transfer out form to try and keep the errors in SIS from continuing and catching them on the front end, so that if we were having to track these students down in, say, June before we have to do our reporting out, we can catch those early so that it's not an adjusted cohort, it's the graduation rate on the front end.
I got one question though.
Sure.
Wouldn't we be able to, so if a student leaves RB and goes to a private school, wouldn't we have to give that school a transcript of what he's taken?
Yes.
So wouldn't that be a way to follow that?
It is, but again, the state does not recognize when they transfer to a private school. So according to SIS, they're still kind of out in limbo. They haven't actually landed anywhere, even though they have in fact done the transfer out paperwork, requested a transcript, and they are in fact enrolled in a private school, but yet they're not recognized in the student information system.
So how will you rectify that if you find that, let's say the 4 students went to St. Joe's, and you're able to prove that they're active students? What will your staff have to go into SIS and do so that they're not still counted against us?
We're going to change some of the coding on our transfer out forms and align it more closely to the state. There's different categories, so we're just going to align that with the state code, the state form, so that there's a direct match. And the state won't recognize that it's counted against us. Because right now, it just looks like the student has disenrolled from RB and there's no paper trail on where they go. And again, if we catch it in June, we can resolve that and clear those errors up with the state before actually doing the graduation reporting.
And the people watching this meeting tonight, SIS stands for what?
Student Information System.
Okay.
And that's essentially Skyward and how we track and monitor all of our students going in and out, whether a student is, withdrawing, whether the student is been expelled, whether the student is dropped. Everything is done through SIS.
So the target is that you have 5 more students we need to work on, the building staff's working on this school year, and then the 4 that we need to correct in SIS.
Yes.
And then the next part of your presentation talks about what you're doing in the future to eliminate, hopefully, the 5 students, or how you're projecting.
The additional information on the first page, is that what you're referring to, or the projected rate for the class of 2015?
The additional is the explanation
Of kind of what's happened this year for the class of 2014. We had 12 students that were able to graduate through the credit recovery program in the summer, and then there were 27 reported as non-grads in the student information system. So of those, the 4 students that transferred to another school, that's what those bullet points are, to account for those 27 students. So the hope is to regain those 4 back into, or to not have them count against us. 1 student was expelled, and then we had 13 students drop out. And it's not like those dropouts happen just senior year. I mean, there were a few even starting as early as freshman year, and so that's being proactive and trying to keep that from happening. And then we have 9 students that were retained for the 14-15 school year, with 3 of them being special education students that are returning for transition services. And the state is not recognizing them as graduates, so every high school is facing this where those count against us in our graduation rate. And then those 6 students that were credit deficient and that are returning back for a 5th year. So our efforts are, again, working on those 5 remaining 5th year seniors and cleaning up the 4 students in the student information system, which again could project to a possibly 95% graduation rate.
For 2014.
So the 13 students who dropped out, how many were transfer students? Students that transferred into RB?
When I looked at that, it was not a high number. I didn't specifically state that. It was nothing that was significant. Typically, they were students that were just really struggling with issues that, no matter what interventions we put into place, keeping them in school. Many of them, tried to go through American School for their diploma program, and then some just chose to do a GED program. But we always let them know the door is still open. So if a student does drop out, we still encourage them, if you change your mind, because if they come back in and re-enroll, they don't count against us. So we always keep the door open for them to re-enroll if they leave, say, sophomore or junior year, try to get them caught up credit-wise.
So for a student who's struggling that way and they drop out and they come back, can we offer the online course for that student so they can have a very flexible program?
We can definitely enroll them in Apex so that some of their day is computer-based. They're working at their own pace. We can certainly develop a creative schedule for them. And some of them have actually been completing correspondence classes through American School, and it's an accredited program, so we can bring those courses to RB and add them to the students' transcripts. When parents disenroll their students, we let them know that we're still here. We're still here to support them. If their situation changes, and we can still hopefully get them a high school diploma with their efforts.
Okay.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
The first one is, I think it's a good thing you only had 1 student expelled out of that whole group, right? Does it matter whether they were expelled for disciplinary reasons or whether they were expelled because they weren't actually residents? Are they still counted against us if we expel somebody because they weren't a resident?
This student was expelled for discipline reasons.
I agree
The
with that.
expulsion, I don't think if a student is dismissed due to residency, it counts against us for an expulsion. I think somehow that they
Okay.
can be, I think there is a code on there where the student was not a resident of our district. They would not be counted as an expelled student.
The second question I have is, I know for students that have a special ed plan, they can
Mhm.
continue to be students until I think they reach their 22nd birthday or
The
the
day
day
before their
before, right?
22nd, mhm.
But for students that don't have that type of a plan, how long do we allow them to keep coming? Is it just a 5th year, or?
Any student that has an IEP is entitled to.
No, I mean a
think he's asking
Oh,
non-
non-IEP
I mean, so
student?
students that don't have IEPs, how long do we allow them to continue attending RB?
Well, the hope is that they are able to finish their program within a year.
Okay.
And we had a few students in that situation last year. The good news is they were able to earn a diploma and were able to be counted in our adjusted cohort. Most of them are in Apex now, so it's not like they are in regular, the regular classes. They're able to work at their own pace, and the Apex teachers are working very hard with them to try and move them along, because the truth is if they only have, say, 2 or 3 credits, rather than keeping them for the entire semester, they could work and finish up in a quarter, rather than having them here unnecessarily.
Have we ever had anybody 6th year? I think that's was more than.
I'm trying to find
No.
out, does everybody have an opportunity for a 5th year?
Yes.
So, I mean, but
Yes.
that's it, if you don't graduate and you don't have an IEP after 5 years, we don't
Yeah, I
allow
don't
you
think
to
we've had
continue.
anyone.
So if I'm a
longer.
student-
But that was a special education student.
I think there's
No,
an
we
age
did have a
cap.
student this year. I believe they age out right before their 21st birthday, but then he dropped out. We did allow him to come back for 6
I think in the
year.
event that we had a student that needed 1 or 2 credits, and it was required for a 6th year, we would set up the alternative Apex like
Mhm.
we've been doing to get up their diploma.
But we give everybody the opportunity
Mhm.
for a
Correct.
5th year,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
And it would be on a case-by-case basis.
Case by
When it
case.
starts to get to a point where you need a 5th and 6th year because you're deficient 15 credits,
Right.
and you're gonna be 20, then we start, talk to the student about counseling other options about a GED.
I see a couple of students got GEDs too, so.
Mhm. Yeah, and those students were students that dropped out and chose a GED program. But probably 5, 6 students a year contact me and want to re-enroll after they realize that the GED program is difficult and it definitely limits their options. So
Oh.
we try to really counsel students when they're making that decision to disenroll and think a GED is the easier route, because it really isn't. Okay?
Projection for next year?
Projection for next year. So this is a breakdown. I know I shared this similar report with you last year for the class of 2014. So this is the class of 2015 broken down by students that have already enrolled in American school and the students that have dropped. And the number is pretty high, and it's for a number of reasons. Number of students that are reclassified, and so our hope with those students is that through Apex, through a lot of support with a social worker, a lot of really intense proactive support with parents and all the resources that we have in the building, and possibly summer school, that they can still graduate on time. So this is kind of worst case scenario. Possible certificate of completions and special education students, looking at 7. We've had 1 expelled student. So right now, 93.9 is kind of where we're sitting in worst case scenario, and the goal is to not let it go any lower than that, putting lots of focus and energy on our most at-risk students, and listed some things there to kind of improve that graduation rate, things that we're being very proactive with. Bringing on the drug and alcohol counselor, I think with some of our students that are really struggling with substance abuse. We are starting a new Check and Connect program with social workers and deans that are doing some really intensive check-in and check-out time with our most at-risk kids. I'm talking specifically with seniors that just really need kind of constant attention. All of these students that are credit deficient are currently enrolled in Apex, and or American School, but most of them are enrolled in Apex, and the Apex teachers are doing a wonderful job this year. They're very hands-on. They've built wonderful relationships with the students, and we've just seen a lot of success with this program. I myself am overseeing Apex this year, so I'm making it a point to meet with them twice a month, and then they also meet with the counselors once a month, so we're just keeping just kind of a watchful eye on these kids. We're monitoring them diligently to make sure that they are making adequate progress. And then when adequate progress is not being made, we're making phone calls home, we're trying to set up meetings, you know, really trying to help parents see that we're wanting to get them where they need to be so that they can graduate on time. And if they need to come back in the summer, we offer Apex Summer School, but the hope is that they will finish in June, and then, you know, they will be counted in our graduation rate for 2015.
So Beth, is the 93.9 the projected adjusted cohort rate?
No, that's kind of the projected worst case.
Graduation rate.
Mhm.
So then it can only go up if we,
That's the hope.
okay.
That's the hope, is that if we're really focusing on those reclassified students and we don't lose any more students, you know, through, you know, an expulsion, or, you know, students decide to drop out, really counseling them that is not the best option. And we try to be flexible with scheduling, with using Apex, with being creative in their schedules, you know, because traditional school is not for every student, so sometimes you really have to think out of the box to get them invested, you know, still getting a quality education, still keeping our integrity with the, you know, curriculum that we're providing them, but you know, we have to work with these kids at some level to, you know, encourage them to hang in there with us. Again, the reclassified students and credit deficient students, we're monitoring. We have small team meetings where I facilitate that with the social workers, the deans, our school, the counselors, our school psychologist, our behavior interventionist. So this is a constant monitoring where these students are not getting, they're not falling through the cracks, they're not getting lost.
I have a question regarding the dropped students. Is there a pattern in a particular year where you see a big drop?
I feel like sophomore year is a year where students have maybe not had a successful freshman year experience, and they get back and just feel like if they weren't successful, just feel defeated.
So like out of this class of 15, the 8 drop students, do you think would,
The class,
The
the
proje-
students,
for the-
yeah,
do you think most of them dropped
as sophomores.
early in the sophomore year?
Mhm,
Yeah.
during the sophomore year. So I think
Now,
that.
can you predict that off of the freshman performance?
Well, our hope is to really monitor the freshmen after the first semester to see who is credit deficient and kind of identify those at-risk students. Data mining, which is a program through Skyward that we just learned more about today, and trying to get good information. You're looking at deficiencies in credits, you're looking at behavioral referrals, you're looking at attendance, you know, those patterns that are being developed to really show what an at-risk student might look like.
So do they typically come back for their sophomore year? Do they typically come, and then after a couple months into it, they drop?
Yeah.
Is that what typically?
That's kind of what I've seen.
Why is that?
I don't know, kids that have just been disengaged from school to begin with, and then when they start seeing, when it starts getting tough, you know, freshman year, they might have kind of made it through, and then sophomore year, it starts to get a little bit more difficult, starts feeling a little bit more real. You know, parents get frustrated with their students. Some of them just, you know, it's hard to deal. They don't really have a lot of options. So some of them will say that they're going to homeschool them, and I'm not really sure how much they follow through with that. There's not really one scenario. It's complicated. There's usually a lot of issues going on.
Gary, I think Gary is a good kind of train. What you said, reclassified students, and I should have asked, what does that even mean?
So In January, prior to students taking the PSAE, we have looked at the number of credits that a student has, and if they have less than 11, we reclassify them from
Senior to junior?
junior to sophomore, so
Okay.
that they don't take the PSAE, because if they're credit deficient, our concern is they are not prepared to take the PSAE. Now, this is gonna look very different now as we roll into Park, because it's no longer a grade level. They're gonna be measured on a particular class. So reclassifying students probably will not happen from this point forward, because regardless of what grade they're in, if they're in a particular English class or math class, they're gonna be obligated to take the class regardless of what.
And I assume the hope then, the way you described it, is they would hopefully still graduate in 5 years if we reclassified them as sophomore.
Yeah, some of the reclassified students still pull it together and graduate in 4 years. It's just really being on them, really laying out a plan. It starts to feel hopeless for some of them when they feel like they're so behind. So setting up a plan that's realistic for them, where they feel like they can make it happen. You talk about summer school, you really lay it out. You have the parents involved, you make them feel like this is doable. I can make this happen.
So if you go into the other one, I know what a GED is, but you mentioned American School
American
a couple
School.
times. What is
Mhm.
American School?
It's an online program that's either paper pencil, where the students do the work, send it in. They've upgraded to a lot of online courses, and they have a diploma program. So for some students I'll tell you, school refusal is just an issue that we are dealing with on a daily basis. Kids that just will not come to school. And parents are looking to us to help get them here, and whatever tricks we have and it's a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's anxiety, sometimes it's just being defiant, sometimes there's fear, there's all these things we're trying to pull,
I was kind of leading, so we understand so a lot of the expelled students not coming back, certificate completion students probably will go down that track and
Mhm.
probably won't get your traditional diploma. So that leaves 16 students, which would be a 4% if all of them graduate, increase in our graduation rate roughly. So my question is, you're saying a lot drop out after sophomore year. We've been told, and I think taking it to heart, that engagement is a huge thing for
Mhm.
kids, and they stay. Besides, all these programs you talk about seem to be adults trying to influence students.
Mhm.
Do we have any kind of program, and I know we did the research and some kids are busy and all that, but do we have any program where we try to get the students to encourage students to stay in, like join a club or go to the National Honor Society where kids tutor, where I've heard my kids were in it, that some students enjoy, feel like they get it a little more, will listen a little more when there's a student working for them. So do we try to engage it for students to help these, or is that
STAR
kind of?
program, right?
Yeah, that's at the freshman level. So we have a peer mentoring program at the freshman level, where the peer mentors go into academic support every other week and try to outline all of the different resources and what helped them as they were struggling as a freshman, and how to get involved in the different activities. And then at the sophomore level, we have a staff to student mentoring program that tries to do the same thing, and encourage students to take advantage of NHS tutoring, and sometimes we'll even walk them down there to make sure that they feel comfortable and know where it is and things of that nature, and try to pair them up with other students. And for that, we capitalize on trying to find a mentor that already has a relationship with that student from freshman year, and try to capitalize on that relationship that they've already formed.
We don't have a full-blown peer mentoring program. Two of the social workers are going to another high school next week, actually, to do a little investigation in how they've started their program and the success that they've had. So it is definitely something that we're exploring.
Thank you.
Plus, given when I saw, and maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead, if you're saying that the drop students are, 8, there, like Gary said, is there a characteristic or something like that I know that you're looking, now you start looking further ahead, saying, okay, in 2016, looking at, these are the traits of the 8 drop students. What do we see out there that's people matching that? Are we,
I don't think there's one profile, because there's some students that are drop even though they're being academically successful. I think that just not wanting to come to school and not making the connection, the importance of a high school diploma, and quite honestly, sometimes we don't have the parent support on this. We have, they're willing to allow it to happen, so there's only so much that we can do. There's only so much encouragement in trying to educate the parents as much as possible. And again, like I said, with the other students, letting them know, come back. If this doesn't work for you, let's get you re-enrolled and get you started on the right track.
okay.
Do you find those students leave and they work? So if they're disengaged at school, they can work, they make money, they move on?
There are some, but in all honesty, it's not. We probably don't follow them. We don't know exactly what happens to them. Sometimes people will see them in town, and
Okay.
but the hope is for the class of 2016, we just keep seeing that number less and less.
Okay. Any other questions on graduation rate protection? Okay.
Okay.
Matriculation, Beth?
Matriculation. So I think this was a nice bump from 2013 to 14. Looking at the eligible cohort, we were just looking at students that earned a diploma. So students that dropped or the expelled students, we can't be expected for them to go on to a 4-year or 2-year college when they're not in the building. And again, these are what students have reported, what their plans are, where they're going. And this year we had a representative from Triton who was here 2 days a month, and he worked one-on-one with students. We had a really nice system where the counselors used a Google Doc and would sign students up and give their interest. And the rep was here giving them one-on-one time and attention, because I really feel like those students that are apprehensive about going to a 2-year school, not knowing what the next steps are, he was able to meet with parents and really just kind of put them at ease, give them an overview of the programs at Triton. And I really think that was one of the reasons that we've seen an increase with our number of our students that were going to pursue Triton, where in the past they might say, oh, I'm just going to work, and realizing that they can do both. I think that Rolando is his name. I think he did a really nice job with helping students see that you can balance both, some courses at Triton, and you can balance work and work towards some type of degree. And I also think Triton has done a really nice job with partnering with 4-year universities and helping students see where maybe if cost is something that's prohibiting them from starting school, that if they start at Triton and they get a 2-year degree, we have so many schools in the area that are working closely with Triton to ensure that those 2-year degrees, those 2-year credits, are going to transfer to a 4-year degree. And I think that the counselors were very purposeful this year and really targeting kids that didn't have plans. We're kind of undecided and really pushing them to think through that. And not saying that we didn't do that before, but I think it was really just a joint effort in trying to increase that, and every year just trying to increase that number so that students know that there are options for them. They don't have to feel limited.
Beth, is this off of the final transcript request? Is that how we tally this?
This is what students have reported on their senior survey, where they are, what their plans are. And then we have now purchased Student Tracker. That's on the second page, and things that we're going to be doing for the future. So Student Tracker is part of Naviance, and this will be it's actually the National Clearinghouse, so it will be a way for us to look at our graduates to see, did they actually go where they said they were going to go, and how long is it taking them to complete a 2-year degree? How long is it taking them to complete a 4-year degree? So that'll be really good data to look at as student services, and then also I think the instructional coaches and teachers as well will be interested to see that.
Are we trying to, matriculation, I know that Dan Moon brought it up a lot about the industrial arts area. Are we trying to expand our reach with that? Like Triton has a very good program, and even, Morton might have something that they don't offer. Are we trying to expand that with kids that are not going to say, hey, I'm going to get a 2-year degree, I'm going to get something where it's going to give me a skill that's going to make me, become a mechanic or,
Yeah, I think that, again, having the Triton rep here twice a month was able to have those kinds of conversations. This year, we're hopeful to bring in a few teachers from Triton to go into maybe the auto classes, the foods and nutrition classes, some of the other applied arts classes, to talk about those types of jobs for students where maybe just traditional school hasn't been their thing, hasn't been a good fit, and to talk about those options. So yes, that's a goal, a plan.
okay.
And I understand why you did this by cohort, but does a student need a high school diploma to go to a technical school, a trade school, or enter the military?
They do.
For all three of them?
Yes, and the military will not accept a GED.
Okay.
They have to have a high school diploma, which is
Okay.
why I have students returning and asking, can I get my diploma? Well, you're 23 now, that's, feel bad, but yeah, the military no longer will accept a GED.
Okay.
They need a high school diploma.
Do our students know that?
They do,
Okay.
because when the counselors are meeting with the students and talking about their post-secondary plans, and sometimes the students will just say, I'm just going into the Army. They're really able to talk them through that, and that may be their choice today, but it's really talking to kids about having options, that to just not live for the moment, but to think about themselves 5-10 years from now. And that's a lot of the work that the counselors are doing on a consistent basis.
Any other questions on matriculation? All right.
Nice job, Beth.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thanks.
Beth, you also included a list, just so the board's aware, that's all this final transcripts that we received requests. These are all the universities that students were projected to go to or had final transcripts sent to them?
Yes.
Okay.
That list is, an overall list of where students requested their final transcripts. And then I think I provided a list of where all of our students applied. I think Dr. Keene had asked for that during the summer, and that is actually posted on our website, so people can go on, and it's not just where the students ended up, but I think it's impressive to see where our students are applying to.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Kristen, the
Thank
last
you.
page, the chart, so this is all that we're done on reporting then, correct, for all of your goals?
Yes, so I included
Apply
the
to the
chart which
building?
has the updated numbers for 2014.
So the graduation rate will be adjusted at the end of this school year once we see what happens with the,
SIS, and I'm working with data processing to get that cleared up, and we're really hopeful that we'll have a few more of those fifth-year seniors now that one has already graduated. We're really working hard to make that happen.
And that number doesn't get adjusted until August.
okay.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Okay, next, good.
Okay. Given that,